we go ahead and get going? And Tyler, this is going to be a very small group. But we do want to go through this presentation, and I do want to let you know that we are going to be recording it. And this is a short presentation on this Brilliant Southwest Building Code Collaborative. And it's specifically, so we've had a couple public sessions. This isn't specifically intended for building code officials and other jurisdictional staff focused on this work. So it's a little bit tailored versus our previous sessions. So what we're trying to accomplish today and what you hope you get out of this is to learn a little bit more about the collaborative and what it's up to and what it hopes to achieve. To also provide you an opportunity to provide feedback on the framework that's guiding the building code development. So discuss the code alignment with local communities, learn about potential implementation resources and future development opportunities. And then also to understand how the collaborative work differs from other building code adoption processes that either are ongoing or scheduled to happen in the near future. So we'll do a couple things. So we'll introduce the project team that's here with us today, who's going to be presenting. And then we'll do some other introductions as well for folks on the line. We'll dive a little bit into the project purpose and background, and then talk about its relation to building safety. We'll talk about the risk and hazard framework, so that guiding framework that's driving the code development process. Also sort of inserted into that is how the sort of the people factor comes into play, so the rural and residential considerations and how that's tied into this work. And then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A and discussion. All right, so with that, we just want to introduce the folks on the line. And so the project team folks that will be that are associated or presenting today will go first. And just remind everyone here to just indicate your name, location, organization, your role with the project, and your relationship to the fields and your experience with the field. All right, so Kevin, we'll start with you.
Hi, yeah, Kevin Berry. I'm a project manager at NBI, and I'm gonna just hand it over to Tristan real quick to keep things moving along, since he'll be speaking for NBI today.
Thanks. This is Tristan Grant. I'm the acting director of codes and policy at New Buildings Institute. We have been leading the collaborative in partnership with the city of Tucson, and have been primarily working on the code development and language development around the resilience code. Thanks.
All right, Clayton.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Clayton Trevelyan. I work for the city of Tucson. I've been with the city for 20 years. I've served as a building official for the past 10. And throughout my tenure here at the city, I've worked on a number of sustainable ordinances, green building practices, green building certification programs. And my motivation is really to improve the world around me, and I feel strongly motivated to do that. My role on this project has been primarily a technical advisory. The last few years, I've dedicated most of my time to code adoptions and policy development. So that works hand in hand with the work that we're doing here. And I'll pass the mic to Mr. Baxley.
Thank you, Clayton. My name is Mike Baxley. I am with the city of Tempe. I am the building official for the city. I have been a building official now for 18 years across a couple different jurisdictions. I serve the team as technical advisory, and looking forward to seeing how this project can make it easier for others out there to adopt things. And Shay?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sharia Jimenez. I'm a principal designer here with Quadro. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. I provide architectural drafting and design services I have experience also working in the field of affordable housing um, and planning. I've helped here locally in Tucson with ADU policy and adoption, and I'm excited to be a part of this collaborative. I'm leading one of our subcommittees called the Equity Advisory Panel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm
Right.
Greg Kinkle with Quest Energy Group. We're a small consulting firm here in Tempe, Arizona, and we work in the private sector. And we've been working here for 20 years, consulting on energy, sustainability, and helping people with energy codes. And so my role on the project is helping head up the technical advisory group. And we have a lot of people from different backgrounds on there, but mine is from the private sector to kind of help with how it would be implemented and kind of helping to put together that code. And I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Lisa Clark with Southwest Decision Resources, part of the facilitation team working with Brian on this project. We're focused on the community engagement components for the collaborative, and have a history working with a variety of other municipal planning type projects in the Southwest region, especially in Arizona. To you, Brian.
Yeah, and so back to me, Brian Manwaring again. I'm also, as Lisa mentioned, with Southwest Decision Resources, and I'm in Tucson, Arizona. And yeah, so we've been doing this work, and I've been doing this kind of work, collaboration, bringing people together, community engagement for a couple decades now, and just really pleased to be applying this to this work. So this is going to be, and we anticipated a very intimate engagement, very intimate meeting. So we would like to invite you to verbally introduce yourselves. And I think just simple introductions, if you're willing, name, your location or jurisdiction, or organization, and your role or title. And so I'm going to start with one of our other core team members, Nicole Hill.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Hill with the Nature Conservancy. I manage our climate and clean energy program, and we've been trying to figure out how to support more resilient housing codes across the state. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. And I'm sorry if I do not get your name right the first time, but Linnea?
Linnea Brudenell. Hey, thank you so much. Nice to be here. Greg Kinkle invited me, just throwing down the where the invitation came from. I'm the National Director of Sustainability and Resilience at RSP Architects, which is at Fifth Ave and College Avenue in Tempe, a stone's throw from City of Tempe. And I have policy and code development experience as well. I worked with the City of Scottsdale in the development and adoption of the IGCC. Different mayor at that time, different city council, but worked really well with the folks that were in the mix of that adoption. And I'm very passionate about codes as community action and as per sustainability action. And I'm currently on the Green Build Program Working Group, which supports a Green Build, and we select all the different proposals for future Green Build. And it's the largest green building conference in the world. This year it's in LA, community planning. Many of the events are with the city of Los Angeles due to the fires that happened. But yeah, very excited to just be here. And I can be a participant, a workhorse in serve in any way capacity that best suits the needs of the group. So thank you very much. I'm a licensed architect. Just don't shoot the messenger.
Thank you for that. Appreciated. And then Tyler. Tyler, if you're there and willing to introduce yourself, yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Ty Jennings, Chief Building Official with the City of Casa Grande. Great to see a couple familiar faces. Mike, Clayton, nice to see you guys again. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move into our presentations. Before we do that, just want to let you know that you are more Again, this is an intimate meeting, but please don't be intimidated to speak up, ask questions, or whatnot. So this is a very engaging group. If you have questions during the presentations themselves, please feel free to throw those into chat. We'll also be keeping an eye out for hand raises and whatnot, but we'll look to respond particularly to clarifying questions throughout the presentations, and then there will be space and some time set aside at the end for more robust questions or more robust discussion. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, who's going to talk a little bit about our project purpose and background. So Greg, over to you.
You're muted.
Thank you. So our collaborative, we wanted to first kind of talk what our goal is, what we're trying to do, what we're coming together to actually accomplish. So what we were tasked with was to transform building construction practices across the Southwest to achieve highly efficient and climate resilient buildings and communities while preserving affordability and regional characteristics. So a couple of key things to take from that is one of our two main goals are highly efficient and climate resilient buildings. So that's what we're really looking at, not just efficiency, but how do we make our buildings resilient? And not just our buildings, but also our communities. We want to make sure that we are impacting those. So as we came together as a collaborative, the first thing that we did was putting together our team. And with it being Southwest, we wanted to get people focused in the Southwest. And our collaborative is really made up of three major groups. So we have our jurisdictions, which was important for the Southwest, that we have representation from people who are actually working and dealing with the codes inside of Arizona and New Mexico. So you'll see a whole list here from Albuquerque, smaller places. We have Flagstaff, we have Mesa, but then also big cities like Phoenix. We have Scottsdale, Tucson, just a great collaboration of different municipalities. And we're really, even today, our focus is to get the word out there and to get more municipalities on board and aware so that we can include them and work with them. The collaboration also pulled in technical partners. One of our main technical partners is NBI, the New Building Institute, who's helped lead a lot of our actual actions in here and has carried a lot of our collaboration. But you'll see other ones in here like ICC, our company, Quest Energy Group, Quadro, but we have a lot of technical partners in here that help make up part of our TAG technical advisory group. So we have 24 members total on that group. And then lastly is our engagement partners. And these partners were nonprofits or community groups that really helped us look at the codes and work with our equity advisory panel, which Shay mentioned that she helped head up in there. So we really wanted a group, a collaboration of lots of different people, not just make it code developers, not just make it nonprofits, but really bring a true group together to put together these codes and these initiatives. Next slide. So tangible outcomes that we're trying to achieve with this, because we had a very vague task in there, but what are we actually trying to get done? The first item is this regional resilience code. So that's what we're trying to do now. We are trying to build a code that helps supplement and improve resiliency in the Southwest and trying to help our municipalities and help our codes actually achieve that. Then beyond that, we also are setting up a net zero roadmap or a future roadmap to help our set goals for the future so that we can actually go beyond just the codes, but how do we improve zoning? How do we improve our municipalities? And how do we set some of these goals out there to help all of our communities achieve this, not just our buildings, but our communities. Then we have our implementation resource. So we set the goal far with our roadmap. Now we want to help give the resources to actually do that. So we're working on the codes, but we actually want to make sure that people have the resources to implement these, to do these, and to reach those goals that we set in our roadmap. So these will be tools for building departments and the industry, trainings. We want to make sure that the municipalities really have the tools that they need. And then lastly is our community resources. We want to help provide non-technical information for these building codes and how they can impact actual community members and getting this out there. So when you're looking big picture, I think a really great way to look at this is what can we do now with regional codes? How can we set our goals in the future with our roadmap? Implementation, how do we actually help people get there? And what resources can we give them? And then in the community, how can we spread this news? How can we push this out there and give our community the ability to do this? And I think that's my last, oh, no, and then our phases. So we're wrapping up phase 1 right now, which went through October of 23 and is wrapping up September 25. And this is where we were establishing the groups, reaching out in the community and industry. We were surveying building departments, training on energy codes. And now we're in this code development process where we're actually developing the codes, working on the roadmaps and implementation and resources, and working in the community, just like with these meetings, to actually put input in there. But this phase is won't be finished until 2027, but it's already starting now and working through that. And then lastly, we'll be in 2027, we'll work on publishing those, having our roadmaps, actually putting these out and getting the codes implemented there. And that's kind of our phasing right now. And with that, we'll move into just the relation to building safety, and I'll turn it over to Clayton and Mike.
Thank you so much, Greg. Just like to highlight that our team is primarily made up of a sustainability manager and a building official, me being the building official and Leslie Ethan being the sustainability manager. We've had a number of other folks in the city of Tucson assisting, including some commercial plans examiner, but there is a tremendous time investment and dedication of our team. And the second primary bullet there just identifies some of the activities that we've been involved with. But I'd like to establish 2 facts. One is that the Code of Ethics of the International Code Council includes the protection of the health, safety, and welfare of the public by creating safe buildings and communities. That is really the core of what we do. And it's included in the Code of Ethics for every building official and every building inspector that gets certified through the ICC. The second fact is that the entire premise of the building codes is really a preventative approach. We're trying to prevent negative impacts in the built environment. But the adoption of new codes tends to be retroactive or reactive, which is to say that after a catastrophe occurs, code proposals are made to limit the impact of similar disasters in the future, but they don't have to be. We already know which hazards pose risks to our communities. Now, some building safety professionals do not feel that the energy conservation is included in the scope of building safety. We're not going to get into that too much. What we're really focusing on is what kinds of hazards are legitimate risks that we should prepare for before they cripple our communities. So our collaborative includes a number of building officials, both active and retired, with a tremendous cumulative experience. And we are intimately aware that the enforcement of codes is difficult enough. The adoption of new codes can be even more challenging. But our unique combination of technical experts, municipal staff, folks on the sustainability side, folks on the building safety side, they're all coming together with this joint goal to provide more resilience in our built environment. And with that, I'll pass it over to Mike.
Thank you, Clayton. One of the things I wanted to focus on here is that, as with the city of Tucson, the city of Tempe has put forth significant resources towards this project. With the hours contributed by myself as the building official, we also have our plan review manager that is committed to this project, and then we also have a position for our green building and energy conservation plan reviewer that is part of the project and putting significant hours towards technical input. And the city has a role in technical guidance with our advisory in the technical advisory group, upcoming with the writing group, in the core team, and then on the steering committee too. It is important to note that not only Tucson, but also Tempe and all the other jurisdictions there that were listed on the very front page when we were talking about the number of people and organizations that are involved in this. I'll make sure that what we're looking at here is an end result that is going to come, that's going to be a deliverable that jurisdictions can use to increase their knowledge and codes based on the hazards that we're looking at that are unique for the Southwest United States. And with that, we can go to the next slide.
Thanks, Mike. Alrighty, so when we're looking at bringing additional requirements related to natural hazards and natural risks into the code, what we started with was needing to establish a framework for hazard risk identification and exposure evaluation. If we can go to the next slide, please. So hazards can be natural and human caused. And when we're talking about building codes, we're really looking at the exposure of a site based on environmental, sociocultural, and economic conditions. And then the risk exposure is the extent to which a site, building, community, the individual's occupants or users are vulnerable to those hazards. Next slide. So our area is obviously the Southwest, Arizona, and New Mexico. And when we're talking about environmental conditions and hazards, even within this area, there's a pretty diverse range of conditions. We've got 5 different climate zones across our region. Next slide. So what we started with was looking to identify tools that exist for categorizing applicable hazards to a region. And FEMA has the National Risk Index, which is a data set that includes geospatial mapping tools, both GIS layers and their own online mapping tool that has data at the census tract and county level for, I believe, 16 different natural hazards. Here on the screen, you can see the map for coastal flooding, and this is what you would expect. The perimeter around the US is exposed to coastal flooding risk. If we can go to the next slide. When we start to look at something like heat waves, there is obviously a more patchwork exposure to this throughout the US. And what we have been hoping to do with these tools is create a framework for local jurisdictions to both understand the level of the hazards that are applicable and the level of risk in different areas within their jurisdiction. That's so that let me back up. We are tasked with designing a regional resilience code that is spanning a pretty diverse area. Like I said, 5 climate zones, and that area is exposed to a number of hazards. And there are different levels of risk exposure to those hazards throughout jurisdictions in our region. And so we need a way for different jurisdictions to understand their relative level of risk exposure to applicable hazards. That's both so that they know how to identify the measures of the code that are appropriate to integrate into their building code and compliance landscape, but also so they know which requirements need to be enforced for different buildings and different sites within a jurisdiction. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so when we zoom in at the census tract level within a state or within our region, you can see there is actually a pretty patchwork exposure to even the same hazard. I believe this is extreme heat here. Next slide. So handing this over to you, Greg.
Perfect. Yeah, even on the last slide, you can see the more impact we get across our whole entire state. So as Tristan mentioned, we actually have all these different risks that we need to be looking at, but some of them across the country, but some of them only apply to Arizona and New Mexico. So what we did is, after looking at all the different maps for all the different hazards, we were able to identify which ones really applied to us. And so you can kind of see the first stab on here was, we do have areas that have significant cold wave, and we also have areas where there's significant heat wave. It may not impact every area, but we have some significant areas in Arizona and New Mexico. Then we also identified drought as one of those. Earthquake, even though smaller, still had some areas where that was impactful. And then wildfire, which impacted almost all areas in both of the states in some shape or form. So these are where we started. Next slide. But we really wanted to make sure that it was based on data. We could really focus in and get back up and get this FEMA information. But we also realized we wanted to, talk with our municipalities, talk with our areas, and really make sure this responded to real life situations. And a lot of times codes are developed because of a big event that just happened, a big hazard that they're trying to respond to, and we want to be ahead of that. And so we don't want to be like what we saw in Texas, where there was flooding and cities weren't ready for that. But that was a real life situation that we want to be prepared for. And just like we saw in LA, in California, we saw, fires actually coming through and taking out areas, not even just rural areas, but we're also seeing urban areas being impacted by fires and the smoke that's produced from there, and just its very large impact in those areas. And then even looking longer term, we have a lot of water drought issues even here in Arizona, and we see lakes going down, we see surface water being reduced, and we want to be able to respond to that in real life situations. So we need data to back up what we're doing, but we also want to make sure that we're really addressing what we're facing in the Southwest. And we don't want it to be just adding on pieces of code or increasing efficiency, but resilience should be really about responding to what we're dealing with. And those will change throughout the years, and we want to be responsive to those. Next slide. So after really grabbing the data and then really talking throughout without our team, like what are we really facing here in the Southwest, we came up with these 8 categories to kind of drive our next steps. So extreme heat was one of them. Extreme cold was the next one. Air quality, and that could be from smoke, that could be from indoors, but air quality was a big one. Wildfires and how we address those in our buildings. Water scarcity. Grid outages, so how we respond to when the electricity has gone out or when the grid is overloaded. Precipitation flooding, so flash floods or flooding that comes on real fast. And then the last one, which is kind of a more unique one, but was still important to us, is affordability and natural practices. So how do we make sure that what we're doing, what we're pushing is still affordable? Because the economy is also a big hazard if people can't afford to protect their buildings. And then natural practices. Are there ways that we can do this in a way that highlights what's worked for centuries and is still affordable? So really kind of molding in those into what we're looking at with all these hazards. Next slide. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tristan.
Thanks, Greg. So this process involved a significant mapping exercise for each identified hazard. We started with the hazard and then looked at code measure outcomes or code outcomes associated with that hazard. This here is looking at extreme heat, and we identified reduced urban heat islands, optimized envelope measures, optimized operational procedures, and other outcomes like that. Within each outcome, we broke that down into individual code measures and code interventions, and then we looked at places where those requirements have been implemented in code, already existing codes, in advanced codes throughout the country, in model advanced codes, or in leading jurisdictions, or in other above code programs like LEED, Passive House, and things like that. And so we went through this similar mapping exercise for each of the hazards to put together the landscape of what the requirements may look like. through engagement with our technical advisory committees, our core team and steering committee, and the affordable housing advisory committees, or the equity advisory panel, we solicited feedback on all these to identify which were the most crucial, which were cost effective, which needed to apply to different building types. Next slide. We then looked at layering in commonalities across those code measures to understand where there were synergies, where one code measure was addressing priorities in multiple hazard categories, and where there were potential conflicts, to understand where we needed to align requirements so that we were not implementing something for one hazard category while causing a compliance conflict or an objective conflict in the outcome with another hazard category. Next slide.
And actually, Brian, do you mind going back one slide for just 1 second? I want to say one more thing on that. So this is not representative of all the measures that we've looked at. These are just a couple that have to do with heat island. But as part of that, we were able to put together all these different measures, look at how they interact with each other, and come up with measures that cities, municipalities could adopt and work into their framework. Now you go to the next slide, Brian. So what do we really want these to come together to be? We want them to be a resource for our cities and for the Southwest. So in putting this together, we wanted to find a way, now that we have all these measures, how we could actually make them in a adoptable form for our cities. And so the hope is, and that's where we're kind of at now, is actually working on the code language for these measures and how they could be adoptable. And right now our proposal is to put them in as an appendix that could be adopted with a list of multiple measures that the cities could adopt, either in whole or in part, and be able to implement as part of just regular code, or they could use it as an incentive, but make something that's flexible. We wanted something that was specific, that worked not only for, like you see in this picture, not only for the big cities, but also for the small towns. We needed something that had the resources and the background and the data, so that it wasn't a huge step for small cities to adopt, and that they could actually enforce. And so what we're trying to do with all of this is make it work for all. And so maybe some of the smaller cities can adopt part of this or some of this. Maybe they have the resources to adopt all of it, but we wanted to make it work for all the different city types and come up with products that really could be adopted. So that's what we're really trying to look for now, is that cities would become aware of this as we start to put together those items, and that they'd be able to adopt them in either in between code adoptions or as part of their next code adoption. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shay to kind of go into rural and residential considerations.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sharia Jimenez. As was mentioned before, I've been part of a working group here with the collaborative that's focused on, initially it was equity advisory panel, but with everything going on, we've thought about how we could reframe and still do the important work that needs to be done. And when we were thinking about it, the folks who are in our group represented are mostly from nonprofits, people, advocates in the community, people who work with affordable housing or even manufactured housing. And so we had a pretty diverse group, also from tribal jurisdictions. So when we kind of wanted to shift here to a more, again, just a people-centered approach and looking at what we're doing, really who's represented in the room are people from rural communities and also residential communities. So the rural and perspective lens is, so we're trying to, again, reshift here to really talk about a rural and residential perspective while we're looking at this code development process. So the rural perspective is our townships and communities living in rural areas, tribal areas, and rural homesteads. And the residential perspective is individual homeowners, the DIY homeowner community, folks living in manufactured homes, and also how do we, integrate these processes into existing buildings? And then there's been also a real interest in traditional and vernacular building practices, which, vernacular building practices are usually representative of the culture and the communities that have been here, that have developed building practices, usually from sourcing locally available materials, and usually developed again through tradition and usually outside of academia. So that would, in the Southwest would include the tradition of adobe. There's a strong, I think, natural building community throughout the Southwest that are also looking at cob and straw bale and other types of natural building practices. So next slide, please. The ICC codes that we could be looking at might be anything from the IRC, the International Residential Code, to the existing building code, the IERC, the International Green Construction Code, the National Green Building Standard potentially, and even potentially the Property Maintenance Code. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to talk again a little bit about process and how our group is interacting with other groups. We saw this being a collaborative. The Equity Advisory Panel really focused more on community and community groups, working folks, who work directly with communities that could be affected by these codes and their processes. And then we saw the TAG as, the Technical Advisory Group, very much being centered on code development and being the technical experts in that. And we see our two groups hopefully interacting in a way where the TAG is developing code, and then us as the Equity Advisory Panel can be reviewing that and then providing comments. And we see also, again, the TAG more interacting on the municipal level with the jurisdictional authorities. Next slide, please. So for us, as a, as the EAP, we have a lot of technical experts in their field, but not necessarily experts in code development. So how do we interact and participate in this process has been a interesting problem to solve as part of this collaborative. So what we've kind of come up with here is a way for us to provide feedback, again, looking at this lens of a rural and residential perspective. So we've starting to develop a matrix where we can provide feedback that'll have weighted and scored criteria as we're looking at different code measures. And again, wanted to focus on, what the categories that will, that were important to what we feel the categories that are important to communities and folks at this scale. So that was affordability being number one is always a huge challenge. We want to look both at long-term and short-term affordability. We know that plays out with materiality a lot in people's decisions and choosing building materials. Durability, maintenance. Again, I think with maintenance, there's long and short-term costs, and you have to kind of weigh those out and look at the trade-offs. Accessibility, and not just accessibility, of course, in terms of accessible design principles, but also accessible materials, construction practices. Is it accessible for a homeowner or a do-it-yourselfer? Accessible language has been mentioned, not just by our group, but also in surveys from jurisdictional authorities. Implementable, for folks that, especially at a rural jurisdictional authority, or enforceable by a rural jurisdictional authority. Next slide, please. We've talked a lot in our group about site sustainability and systems. Passive solar design has come up a lot, just how do you properly orient the building to the sun? And that's huge here in the Southwest, where we have so much solar gain. Active solar harvesting, passive water harvesting, active water harvesting, shade, We've even talked a lot about access to utilities and how rural communities even struggle sometimes with access to utilities, and grid outages can be more common. Green infrastructure and passive ventilation strategies. And another criteria we want to look at would be, is it scalable? We know that a lot of code measures that are out there are mostly designed and so far looking at things at a commercial scale. So how would you potentially scale down some of these approaches to a single family residence or an existing building? And then we also want to talk about and look at, of course, as Greg already mentioned, alternative means and methods, vernacular building practices, and then existing ordinances. We know New Mexico has probably one of the best locally adopted Adobe Code ordinances, but there are some I-codes and appendixes out there that address things like COB or, straw bale. And so as part of this process, could we also just recommend that those existing references get adopted? So next slide, please. So this next slide, if you can just kind of toggle back and forth. Brian just shows an example of, your classic passive solar design house that's oriented east-west, has a shallow porch on the south side to allow solar access in the winter and shade in the summer. And this works with the sun and gives you heat when you need it and cools you off also when you need it. And then the trees and the solar arc around the building on the northeast and west sides to help shade and create those microclimates around the building. We're showing also here just a tank, for capturing rainwater, and berms and basins for passively watering also landscape. So again, we've talked a lot about sustainable approaches that are high impact, but hopefully relatively low cost and also accessible for do-it-yourselfers. And these kinds of approaches are really common here in Tucson and probably also in a lot of other local southwestern communities. Next slide, please. I think that's actually it for me.
All right. Excuse me. All right, we're going to turn it back to Greg just to cap off the formal part of the presentation here. So, Greg.
So just a reminder of what we're trying to accomplish here. Today, we talked a lot about the Regional Resilience Code, our first step, and that's what we're trying to really do, of impact our codes right now and what can we change to actually accomplish these things. The next things you'll start to see are our net zero roadmap, which again, focusing on setting our goals. How can we do this even outside of the codes, outside of our buildings, and really influence our municipalities to be able to reach these goals. And then implementation resources are the big piece, which you'll see more and more come out, is our resources for municipalities, for developers, for people to get this actually implemented and meet those goals, not to leave them stranded, but to be able to give them what they need. And then community resources, help our developers, help our homeowners understand these and get behind this and push for this too in our community. Last slide. Yeah, so just a reminder, we're in phase 2 right now. We're excited to be developing and working on this, and we'd love for people to stay in communication. But it's a long-term project, so this will be going through 2028, and we're excited to kind of keep moving through it. But this just kind of reminds you of where we're at and what we'll be doing next. So we'll be working on those roadmaps next. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian and Lisa to kind of wrap us up with the Q&A session.
All right, thank you, Greg, and thank you, everybody. So yeah, that wraps up the formal presentation, and so we have some time, up to 30 minutes, really, for questions and answers, and then a little bit of discussion. Again, this is a very intimate session, so I'm going to take the slides off, and we can either do questions through chat. I'd encourage that, but we can also take questions. If you want to raise your hand, we can do voice questions. But the team is here, and yeah, so it's a good opportunity to get your questions answered. So let me remove my share here, And Lisa, it looks like we already have a question.
We do. And Greg, it looks like you're raring and ready to answer that question. Do you want me to read it off to you, or do you want to read the question and then answer it?
Sure, I can read it.
Okay.
So this question's from Linnea, and she says, with the new ASHRAE climate zone changes coming for IECC 2027 commercial, the Phoenix climate zone will be 1B. How will the changing climate zones from ASHRAE reference standards impact the resilience code development adoption? Is this work in tandem with IECC development, ASHRAE standard developments? Great question. So even a little bit background is we have a lot of cities right now that have just moved from 2018 to 2024. So we're having a lot of code development changes right as we're working on all of this, which can be a huge challenge. And even going forward, we're going to have some people that are adopting 2027, and we have other people that may be waiting to even adopt the next one for an 8-year pattern that they're trying to meet. What we really tried to accomplish with our code development here is that our resilience code could be tagged on with different municipalities, because we are especially in Arizona, everybody has different codes. So we might even still have some people that will be on 2018. We wanted to come up with something that focused in, highlighted, pushed a little bit further, and no matter which code you're on, we could kind of pull that in there and adopt it. So cities may have to be careful on how they're adopting it to make sure that it complements it right, but we're trying to set it up so that it really is flexible and addresses stuff that is actually outside of IECC a little bit, so that we can help. So like where IECC does focus in on cool roofs, we want to be pushing in a little bit more about how do we address the heat island around the building, which may not be addressed in any of those. So there will be some struggles on there, but we definitely have some really great resources of people who actually work on ICC committees, people that are working with ASHRAE, and a lot of expertise of people working with that. So I think we're going to be well ready to adopt that and ready to work with that, but it's a great question.
Thanks, Greg. That was a great answer and really helps just understand. And I recognize I'm a new voice here, so I'm not caught up on everything. But yeah, that was kind of my first off the cuff thinking. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the question, and thanks for the response there, Greg. Is there other questions, or does anybody want to add to that response from the project team? Okay. Well, let me see, before we sort of end the formal presentation and Q&A, is there anybody from the project team that wants to reiterate anything, or is there anything that perhaps was missed that you want to add? I just want to make sure that we cover all of our bases and just offer a little more time if there are any questions.
I think just one great point to add at the end is if you want to get involved, and especially if this goes out to others beyond this group, if it's recorded and stuff, is we really want this to represent the Southwest. And we have a lot of great people in there, but especially when it comes to our municipalities, we would love to see a larger group of even especially the smaller municipalities, because that's where we're really working to be flexible and to get the word out there. Because especially with like a large municipality like Phoenix, they have a lot of resources. And so we really want to make sure that we're taking into account the smaller municipalities, but they're also the ones that have less resources, less time to give. But we would love more input as we get in there, just how we can make this work for them. And if people want to go to our website, we have a great website right now. So if you just type in the RECCE or Resilient Southwest, you will find that. And I think Lisa, could we possibly throw that in the chat of where our website is? And then it's a great way to stay on top of things. We have trainings that are going on there. We have updates. So it's a really great way to be involved. But again, we love all the help, and just we'd love the support of municipalities. This goes out there to be a positive advocate for us as people start to see this. Nobody's usually ever excited about adding more codes in there. So if we can have the advocates that say, hey, this isn't just one more thing to do, this is one more step to focus in on what we're already doing and make it better for us. It was designed by us, for a better Arizona Southwest. And so we really want to make sure that we capture that and we have strong advocates out there as it goes out.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Clayton, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I don't think I could possibly say it as well as Greg just did, but just do want to reiterate the flexibility that we're trying to incorporate into this code so that it can be adoptable by any jurisdiction in the Southwest of any size and hopefully of any expertise level as well. And just want to again say again that we are actively seeking feedback. We are actively seeking partnerships, and we want to hear from municipalities of all sizes, and so that we can help develop this in such a way that it works for municipalities, and provide that flexibility. Another piece that was stated earlier, but I will just say again, we are also working on a roadmap to help those jurisdictions through the adoption process. So please stay tuned and engage us to the best of your ability. Thanks.
All right. And Lisa put the website in the chat, which is, just to verbalize it, www.resilientsouthwest.org. All right. Any final questions or comments?
Hi. I recognize I am not the demographic that is the highly sought after smaller municipality. I am pretty good at digging around and recruiting people from other municipalities, but please let me know, and Greg, you and I can off ramp on this, but where I could plug in and roll up my sleeves and help this group with this effort, long-term effort. So
Thank you. Yeah, we'll take any help we can get. And we've had lots of municipal people coming in on our other meetings and less on this one. So message is the same. We're excited to get whoever involved and to be advocates for this.
All right. So what we're going to do, we'll end the formal part of the presentation and Q&A here.